In reflecting on last Sunday's games, the 11th week of the NFL season marked the return of three of football's most Hollywood figures, and all three are quarterbacks. Bart Starr was back in Green Bay, Sonny Jurgensen in Washington, but perhaps the most conspicuous debut took place inside these walls, the most famous house on Long Island, Shea Stadium. For inside these walls, an apparition would appear, wearing number 12, and ready to play for the first time since last summer, and his first regular season game since October of 1970. Like Shakespeare's tragic hero Hamlet, Joe Namath has certainly suffered the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Last year he broke his hand, and in preseason this year he injured his knee. Last Sunday, he was once again ready to carry on. Namath's debut was to be an imposing one, for his opponent, the San Francisco 49ers, were the NFC's best team at sacking enemy quarterbacks. But Joe Willie Whiteshoes was ready, willing, and able to return to the scene of so many triumphs for himself and his team. I'm Bob Delaney, and this is the NFL Game of the Week. The 49ers and the Jets have never met before, but from the opening kickoff, it was clear that this game would mark the beginning of an impressive rivalry, as both are hard-hitting, physical football teams. Weave Eubank had planned to bring Namath in at the half. Bobby Davis would start the game for New York, and his game plan was to try and run on the 49ers defense. Number 44, rookie John Riggins, had some early success, very early. It lasted for one play, the Jets' first. From then on, during the entire first quarter, Riggins and Emerson Boozer were continually stopped by the 49ers, led by number 57 linebacker Frank Nunley and number 53 N. Tommy Hart. Neither Bobby Davis's sleight of hand nor his scrambling were effective against Nunley and Hart, who are the cornerstones of the 49ers defense, which is number 1 in the NFC. The Jets managed only 2 first downs and a net advance of only 5 yards on their first 2 possessions of the game due to this defense, unable to spring Riggins inside or outside, and unable to fool the 49ers with the reverse. It looked like a long day for the Jets offense. The 49ers had a famous number 12 of their own. John Brody has been beguiling defenses long before Joe Namath was in college, and he started the game by challenging the strongest facet of the Jets' defense. Brody sent number 22, Vic Washington, running around the Jets' flanks on his first series, and he and Ken Willard ran through New York on 8 of 9 plays in the drive, which ended with Washington fumbling the ball away. Repeating the play, watch Washington follow number 69, Woody Peoples, then burned by his blocker. The ball was not knocked loose, but Washington lost it, being spun around with a high-low tackle. However, the fumble did not hurt, as the Jets couldn't move. Punter Steve O'Neill muffed the snap, barely got his kick away, and the 49ers had the ball at midfield. From here, Brody got his team moving again. Watch the perfect protection Brody received from his line as he connected on his first pass to Gene Washington. This was the key to Brody's fantastic success last year as he passed his team to the NFC playoffs. This year, Brody and Gene Washington have been almost as devastating, but another Washington has given them an added wrinkle: speed in the backfield. On this series, which carried into the second quarter, Vic Washington ran 7 of 8 plays in the drive. Washington, a rookie, has been accused of outrunning his blockers. Last Sunday, he outran his blockers and everyone else, and his feet finally ended in the Jets' end zone for the first score of the day. Brody had surprisingly thrown only 2 passes in his 2 series, as the 49ers were beating the Jets' defense at their own game, the run. On the Jets' next possession, Davis sent John Riggins crashing into the line, and the rookie Maxie back picked up his longest gain of the day. Then Davis completed his first pass of the game to a wide receiver. Rich Castor took it inside 49er territory, but it was to be Davis's last pass of the game and perhaps of the season. The reasons were twofold. One, Davis had injured his leg on the play, and as one reporter said, was scraped off the turf like apple butter. Two, there was someone hiding behind the bench ready to come in who would prevent Davis from returning. When his entrance finally came, Namath didn't walk on. Sir Galahad was ready. It was 1:41 p.m. after 19 minutes and 30 seconds of play had elapsed, and 64,000 applauding fans finally had their man back after 20 games without him. But Joe Namath's inaugural pass only gave evidence that he had indeed been absent for 20 games. He threw a few more harmless incompletions on this series and left the field frustrated with his early failure. Later in the half, Namath was not so anxious to pass, and John Riggins carried the Jets for a while on his running. But Joe Willie finally did go to the air again and got his first official completion of the season, a beautiful strike to Boozer, who took it near midfield. Then Namath suffered his first mistake. He underthrew the receiver. Bruce Taylor timed the ball perfectly and raced 40 yards to the Jets' 2. Namath, so far, had thrown 2 incompletions and an interception. An ignominious debut for the shaggy-haired savior from New York. From the 2, however, the 49ers could not take it in. Foiled by the Jets' defense and betrayed by his own receiver, Bob Windsor, on 3rd down, Brody and the 49ers settled for a field goal and a 10-0 lead. Then, with 2 minutes left in the half, Joe Willie got hot. Behind flawless protection, he ate up the 49ers secondary with 2 medium-range passes. Watch Frank Nunley, number 57, try and blitz Namath, but fail, as Namath hit Don Maynard on his 2nd straight completion. The catch put Maynard's lifetime total at 3 shy of 600, and the fans stayed on their feet when an interference call gave Namath a 1st and goal at the 1. But it was here that the biggest play of the half occurred. Namath gave to rookie Steve Harkey, a blocking back in college, and Harkey tried to ram over left tackle. Harkey fumbled before reaching the goal, and after a mad skirmish, the ball squirted out of the end zone for a touchback. The Jets coming up empty instead of getting 7, or at least 3 on the drive. The 49ers' Jimmy Johnson lay injured after the struggle, but he would return. With 40 seconds left in the half, the Jets still had yet to score, and San Francisco easily ran out the halftime clock with Vic Washington again galloping through the Jets' defense. The 49ers had gone with their ground game rather than their long passing, and thus far it had worked well. Joe Namath had made his long-awaited debut, and it had not worked so well, but he had just begun to fight. The half, a 31-yard burst by streamlined Ken Willard, plus a face mask penalty by his tackler, W.K. Hicks, put San Francisco deep in New York territory. Several plays later, from the 1, John Brody rolled right and beat all 3 New York linebackers to the corner of the end zone for a touchdown that put the 49ers in a seemingly safe lead. Steve Harkey's disastrous fumble in the first half didn't look so big now, with the Jets trailing by 17 points. But as Joe Namath and Weeb Ewbank awaited the kickoff after the 49er touchdown, the real drama of today's game began to unfold. New York started their first series of the half on the ground as Emerson Boozer sliced for 10 yards. But then from his own 43, Joe Namath came up with his first big play of 1971. The pass was perfect. The Jets had scored, and 63,936 people went wild. An isolated look at receiver Rich Castor on the play shows the pass came in chest high, and Castor was on his way. The huge 6'5" end from Jackson State is an interesting story. When he joined the Jets last year as a rookie, Namath took him under his wing and touted him as a future star. Castor looked like one until Namath was injured. Since then, he's been inconsistent and criticized for dropping passes, and his confidence has dropped with them. But today, with Namath back for the first time in 20 games, Rich Castor was one of the stars of the game. The Jets were finally on the scoreboard, and here their defense came to the fore. San Francisco had been gaining huge chunks on the ground, but this series was stopped by a gang-tackling wave of green and white. The defense forced a 49er punt, and the Jet offense eagerly awaited another chance. Don Maynard, the 13-year veteran, has been Namath's favorite receiver down through the years, and no one more than he has suffered through the loss of the star quarterback for the past season and a half. On this, the start of the Jets' second series of the half, Namath fired to Maynard over the middle for a gain of 23 yards. It seemed like old times were here again for New York. But the attack stalled, and Bobby Howfield was called in for a 47-yard field goal attempt, which was short. It almost produced a big break for New York. The 49ers had the ball, a 10-point lead, and Ken Willard. The 49er fullback has lost 25 pounds this year and greatly increased his quickness and agility. Willard went 49 yards, but that was to be all, as great individual efforts on 3 consecutive plays stopped San Francisco. The first was made by Larry Grantham, who threw Vic Washington for a 6-yard loss. The next 2 were made by cornerback John Dockery, as John Brody put the ball in the air for the first time in this half. Dockery batted away a pass intended for Gene Washington in the end zone. And then as Brody attempted a 3rd down pass for Ted Kowalik, the man from Harvard was there again. The 49ers had been stopped short again, and the Jet deficit remained 10 as the 3rd period ended. San Francisco again ran at will. Today, Willard and Washington would gain over 125 yards apiece. From the Jet 22, after a fake to Willard, Brody lofted a pass to Vic Washington all alone at the goal line for an easy score. A Jet linebacker failed to pick up Washington coming out of the backfield, and this repeat shows why. Watch number 55, John Ebersole, go for the play fake to Willard. This froze the right side of New York's defense and allowed Washington to make his stumbling catch unmolested. Ebersole finally caught up with him a bit too late. It was a big play in a day full of big plays, but this one seemingly put the game out of reach, 24-7. During this season of injury, it's been the Jet defense that has carried the team. Today, they had given up 24 points, and it obviously was left to a heretofore lethargic offense and their rusty leader to win the game. In the next 7.5 minutes, Joe Namath, despite the long layoff and a foot that was numb, showed the 49ers, his teammates, and a screaming crowd of 64,000 what greatness is. Of course, football is never a one-man show. Watch number 37, San Francisco's fine cornerback Jimmy Johnson, defense a perfect pass from Namath. Johnson, like Namath, was playing with pain. A cast covered a fractured wrist. The jet drive gained impetus when on third down, Bruce Taylor was called for interfering with Eddie Bell. Taylor never looked around. He knew the flag was thrown. New York had a first down in good field position, and Namath, rushed hard by Cedric Hartman, unloaded in time to hit Pete Lammons over the middle. A repeat of the short pass shows Namath knew Hartman was coming fast, yet never took his eye off his target, and paid for it the Hardman way. Two plays later, from the 20, Rich Castor made a nice catch in front of Johnny Fuller for the score. The Jets had narrowed the gap to 10. Steve Spurrier replaced John Brody on the next series and found the New York defense too determined to run against. San Francisco was forced to punt, and here, the Jets forced the big break they'd been needing. A strong rush blocked the punt, and New York recovered on the enemy 22-yard line. Now at the 22, Namath dropped back, looked right until the last minute when he threw left to Eddie Bell, who had beaten Bruce Taylor. New York had scored 14 points in just over 2 minutes, and now trailed by only 3 points. It was again up to the defense as the Jets kicked off with over 4 minutes remaining. New York couldn't allow San Francisco to control the ball. It appeared that fate was against them when Brody, back in the game, completed a rare pass off the fingertips of Paul Crane. But several plays later, in a crucial third down situation, Jerry Philbin made a great play to stop Willard in his tracks. The return of the 8-year veteran end had given a big lift to a defense that was decimated by a wave of unprecedented injuries. The defense had done its part. New York had the ball with 1:41 left in the game. This game, which was so important to both teams, had gone down to the wire and now rested squarely in the hands of one man. From his own 28, Joe Namath speared Rich Castor for 10 yards and a first down. The clock was still running. Ball now on the 39. Namath threw. A great catch by Bell, and New York called a timeout with 51 seconds left. From the enemy 40, Namath tried to go to Bell again, despite double coverage, which almost resulted in an interception by Bruce Taylor. "46 seconds remaining, and Namath, having trouble finding a target, threw right into the hands of Dave Wilcox. Watch number 44, John Riggins, desperately try to grab the ball instead of tackling the 49er linebacker. It appeared to nearly everyone that a great effort by a great quarterback had ended on the interception. Watch the reaction of San Francisco's Jim Snidecki on the sidelines during the play. But what Snidecki failed to see was that a flag had been thrown. The hard-rushing Cedric Hartman had been offside, and Joe Namath and the Jets had a new life. "34 seconds were left now, and Namath crossed up his opponents with a trap play to Emerson Boozer for good yardage. On a great effort, Boozer had managed to get out of bounds to stop the clock. There were now 22 seconds left, and the Jets were on the San Francisco 19. Namath now returned to the air, and this pass, intended for a heavily guarded Rich Castor in the left corner of the end zone, fell incomplete. The whole game had now come down to one final play, with only 16 seconds to go. One last play for the miracle finish to be fact or fantasy, victory or defeat. The sad ending for New York had been provided by Johnny Fuller, a reserve safety who had been stung several times today. But now the 4-year veteran from Lamar Tech in Beaumont, Texas, was the hero of the game. The 49ers were victorious in a crucial game. They are locked in a tight race with the Rams in their division and now lead them by 1/2 a game. For the Jets, hopes have ended for a winning season. But in many ways, they have been winners. They never gave up in the face of devastating injuries and have won some big games this year. That this was nearly one of them can be attributed to the electric presence of one man and his remarkable return to action. Almost every player on the San Francisco team, including Dick Nolan, the coach, offered a personal tribute before leaving the field. So the long-awaited return of Broadway Joe was over, and he had just missed giving 64,000 screaming fans and his admiring teammates the victory they hoped he'd provide. But Joe Namath, in this his first game in 1.5 years, dramatically showed the game of football what it had been missing.